A quick internet search will provide you with a seemingly endless number of unsolved mysteries, including paranormal events that have never been explained, crimes that have never been solved, and people who went missing and were never seen again. Some unsolved mysteries, though, are more obscure than others, and for whatever reason, never received as much attention as some of the more famous cases did. Number 10. 20-year-old Kyle Epler was known to have a huge love of animals. So much so, in fact, that he had a range of pets, including 2 dogs, 5 lizards, a parrot, and 7 turtles. He also volunteered at animal control as well as the Humane Society, and had on occasion worked at several different snake farms. In 1999, he was attending courses at Santa Fe College in Gainesville, Florida, where he was furthering his love for animals by studying zoology. His family also says that he always had a love for the outdoors, a factor that would play a major part in his disappearance in July of that year. On the 19th of July that year, Kyle traveled to his mother's place of work for a visit, and while there he asked if he could borrow $20, as he needed to put gas in his car. He told her that once he had done that, he was going to his girlfriend's house before heading to work for his 4:30 p.m. shift at the Grouper House restaurant, where he worked as a waiter. His mom asked if he would drop her laundry off, and he agreed before setting out. Kyle never arrived at his girlfriend's place, and when his mother got home from work later that day, she found that he'd left a note on the kitchen counter that read, "Gone to find my river and myself." When he still hadn't returned home by the following morning, his mother contacted the police and reported him missing. His silver 1988 Toyota Camry was spotted later in the visitors' parking lot of the Coastal Prairie Trail in Flamingo, and when investigators arrived at the scene, they determined that it had been abandoned there. Inside the car, they found a jar of peanut butter, some crackers, his journal, a backpack, camping gear, and a bag containing several items of clothing. It seemed as though he'd planned on staying out in the wild for some time, but it was uncertain why he would leave all his gear behind. When a search was conducted on a nearby trail, Kyle's shirt was found about 3 miles from his car, and according to his mother, he had taken a pair of his hiking boots from home along with one of his favorite hats, a navy blue one, that had a white star on the front. Despite further searches being conducted, no further sign of Kyle was ever found, and his whereabouts still remain unknown today, almost 25 years after he went missing. He's described as having brown hair, green eyes, standing 5 foot 10 inches tall, and weighing 160 pounds. The Collier County Sheriff's Department is still investigating this case, and has asked that anyone with information on Kyle's case, or his current whereabouts, contact them at 239-252-9300. You can also get in touch with your nearest FBI office if you prefer. Kyle's nameless case number is MP11497. Number 9. People who follow the lives of celebrities often enjoy collecting souvenirs depicting their favorite stars. This may take the form of shirts, coffee mugs, posters, or in one case even shower curtains. In a strange case from 2008, a Finnish Redditor named Tansa posted to a forum to show off a piece of fabric called figures that he'd acquired with different celebrity faces printed on it. His fellow Redditors were quick to identify 7 of the 8 faces on the fabric, but one, number 6, left everyone baffled. Tansa asked if anyone could identify that specific face, but no one was certain who the image was supposed to depict. This led to hundreds of people from all over the world taking part in the mystery, in an effort to identify the one image that had them stumped. One of the main issues with the printed image is that it's rather androgynous, with some people claiming that it's a woman while others think it's a man. The hundreds of people who were attempting to solve the mystery quickly turned into thousands, with as many as 9,000 people joining this post. Some contacted the Finnish company called Antilla, who produced the piece of fabric, but found that they'd gone bankrupt and no longer existed, while others scoured through old tabloid magazines in hopes that they would stumble across a similar image, but with very little success. As the mystery deepened, many potential names were put forward, including suggesting that it might be Brad Pitt, Kristen Stewart, River Phoenix, Heath Ledger, Jodie Foster, Travis Fimmel, Nicolette Sheridan, and Evangeline Lilly. The famous model Philippa Hamilton has even contributed by stating that she believes the image is of her, but online sleuths seem to disagree. One Redditor has come closer than anyone else when they managed to find out who designed the piece, but their hopes were dashed when the designer revealed that he couldn't remember who the image was of. But he did state that the images were taken from a 2015 issue of Hello magazine, but this has been highly disputed since the piece has been on sale since at least 2008. This added further confusion to the mystery, as Hello magazine is known to only publish the latest pictures of celebrities, while the fabric contained images from as far back as 1999. Frustratingly, many Reddit users have stated that they remember seeing the original image at some point, but that they couldn't remember who it was that appeared in the photo. One person who made this claim stated that they remember the celebrity having a VIP or backstage pass around their neck in the photo, and hence it must have been taken at an event or concert of some kind. They also added that they remembered the person being female and that they had blonde hair, but this did little to bring the mystery to a close. In a poll that was conducted, as many as 65% of users stated that they believed the image to be of a woman, while 35% said it was definitely a man. One user went to extreme lengths to solve the case, spending an inordinate amount of time browsing through Getty images from between 1998 and 2007. But they could also only make suggestions as to who it could be, as they were unable to find the exact image that was used. Their suggestions included Johnny Depp, Hilary Duff, Kristen Bell, Kate Hudson, and Angelina Jolie, but for now, the mystery remains unsolved. Number 8. In 1998, a party developer called Michael Bowman decided to buy a plot of land in Miami, where 6 apartment blocks called Brickell Point Apartments used to stand. The buildings had been demolished a short while earlier, and Bowman decided to use the land to build 2 skyscrapers. The buildings would each stand at 40 stories high and would contain luxury condominiums. But before they could be built, an archaeological survey had to be carried out first. And when this was done, a very strange discovery was made. Plans for the construction of the buildings had to be put on hold when hundreds of strange holes, arranged in a perfect circle, were found in the ground, and upon further inspection, they were found to have been made in a section of limestone bedrock. The circle was measured and found to be 38 feet in diameter, and if this wasn't strange enough, further investigation resulted in several strange artifacts being unearthed from the holes that lay under about 3 feet of soil. These included teeth that were later found to be from an extinct species of seal, a turtle shell, and a carcass of a 6-foot shark. The turtle shell and shark remains were positioned so that they faced east to west, suggesting that they were used as part of some ancient burial ritual. They also uncovered 2 stone axes in the easternmost part of the circle, and it's been speculated that these were included in the circle as some kind of offering. The axe heads were found to be made from basalt stone, which isn't native to Florida, adding even more ambiguity to the mystery. One of the first theories that were put forward was that the holes once served as a foundation slot for some kind of upright structure, similar to a structure like Stonehenge. If this was indeed the case, it's thought that the circle used to consist of about 30 upright stones. This could mean that the site was used for determining the start of the solstices and equinoxes, though it would likely have been used as a ceremonial site, though this still remains mere speculation. Pieces of charcoal that were found at the site were sent for radiocarbon testing and found to be from around 100 AD, though the holes are thought to be much older, since people have lived in the area for more than 200 years. Archaeologists noted that this is the only site in all of the US that contained stone structures that were built into bedrock, and that the circles were part of the oldest known settlement in the area, as other nearby settlements were found to be much younger. They also speculated that the site was constructed by the Tequesta Native Americans, since they were known to have used tools that incorporated items such as shark teeth. But the discovery of the 2 axe heads throws doubt on this theory, since the basalt rock, which they were made from, is believed to have been brought to the area from Georgia. Since the exact purpose of the circle remains unknown, people have come up with a few of their own theories, some of which are rather outlandish. Some believe that the holes were left in the bedrock by extraterrestrials, while others suggest that they were made by the Mayans. Today, the site is still being preserved after the land was purchased by the state of Florida, though visitors are allowed to visit the circle, which is marked by a series of placards. Number 7. In some missing person cases, investigators are certain that someone knows what happened to the victim, but they're either too afraid to come forward or have something to hide from the long arm of the law. This is indeed the case with the disappearance of Jason Rayburn, a 30-year-old man who hailed from Wesson, Mississippi. His case remains unsolved, and investigators have asked anyone who knows what happened to Jason to come forward. On the 27th of September 2010, Jason was living with his mother, Kathy Miller, in Wesson, but he had to check in with his probation officer in Covington, Louisiana, every 30 days. He was supposed to complete one of these check-ins the following day. On the 27th, though, he left his mother's house and may have then walked from Pike County in the direction of Franklinton, Louisiana, where his girlfriend was living. His mother has speculated that he may have planned to visit her. On the 28th, the day he was supposed to meet with his parole officer, he never arrived, and he's remained missing ever since. For the next 2 months, his mother waited and hoped to hear from him, but when she hadn't had any word from him by the 23rd of November, she contacted the police and reported him missing. His truck would be found abandoned in Pike County sometime later, but no clues were found in or around the vehicle, and subsequent searches of the area failed to provide any further clues as to where Jason may have gone. His mother told investigators that he was very much in love with the woman who was living in Louisiana, and hence she believes he was either heading that way or had been there before he suddenly went missing. Investigators have not revealed whether they spoke to the woman or whether she'd seen Jason before he disappeared, and her identity has not been revealed to the public for reasons unknown. Since his disappearance, his mother has had strange dreams about him, one of which involves him going missing. She told a news outlet that she dreamed of a car pulling up to an area where a stop sign had been placed by a yellow sign with arrows pointing in opposite directions. The driver of the car took a left turn at the sign before stopping and opening the car's back door. They then removed Jason from the back seat and rolled him down a hill. This dream is what prompted her to file a missing person report after not seeing Jason for so many months. Since he was in the habit of keeping in contact with his family and friends, Kathy believes Jason did not disappear of his own free will, and she stated on several occasions that she no longer believes he's alive. She feels that if he was, he would have contacted her by now. Jason is described as having brown hair and brown eyes, standing between 5'1" and 5'3" inches tall, and weighing between 110 and 140 pounds. A $10,000 reward is being offered to anyone who comes forward with information leading to Jason being found, and they can relay any tips to the Wesson Police Department at 601-643-2211. Number 6. When we think of cursed objects, most of our imaginations conjure up images of ancient Egyptian artifacts that have been removed from old tombs, or of the haunted dolls that we often see in horror movies. It isn't often that a gemstone is said to carry a curse, but this is the case with the Delhi Purple Sapphire, which is also known by the name of the Cursed Sapphire. Edward Heron Allen was the original owner of the stone, but his daughter decided to donate it to London's Natural History Museum in 1904, and when she sent it there, she included a letter detailing its alleged dark history. The letter stated that the stone was originally kept at the temple of the god Indra in Kanpur, and it was removed from the temple by W. Ferris, a cavalry officer, while a looting was being carried out during a mutiny against the British. After stealing the gem, Ferris brought it back to England, but his looting was a decision that he would live to regret, as he then started having financial difficulties, and before long he was on the verge of bankruptcy. At first, he believed that he'd simply made a series of bad financial decisions, but shortly after, every single member of his family fell ill with a mysterious disease, and he realized that it had to be because the stone that he'd stolen carried some kind of curse. When one of his friends asked if he could borrow the gem, he agreed, but had his worst fears realized when the man passed away. Ferris decided that the only option he had was to give the stone away, and he did so in 1890. This is how the stone ended up in the possession of Heron Allen, who worked as a writer and a scientist. Before long, he also started experiencing a run of inexplicable bad luck, and he started to believe in the rumor that the stone was cursed. Rather than give it away, he attempted to neutralize its powers by placing it next to other ancient artifacts that had been looted, but this made no difference, and his luck showed no signs of changing. He then decided that he had to get rid of it in 1902, But before he could do so, a friend asked to borrow it and he agreed. As soon as his friend took possession of the stone, he also started having bad luck and decided to return it to its owner, who then suffered further misfortune. Heron Allen had had enough by this stage, and out of frustration, he threw it into Regent's Canal and believed that he'd finally rid himself of the curse. But the ring was found in the canal just a few months later and brought to a local jeweler to be appraised. The jeweler immediately recognized the stone and returned it to Heron Allen, believing that he'd done a good deed when the opposite was actually true. It seemed to be following him against his will, and so when another friend, a singer, asked to borrow it, he was glad to be rid of it for a while. But for reasons unknown, the friend never sang again after taking the stone into their possession, and they quickly returned it. Heron Allen decided to pack the cursed object away in a box containing several charms. Once this was done, he placed it in a safety deposit box at his bank, along with a note that stated that the box should not be opened until 33 years after he had passed away. He would eventually pass away in 1944, and going against his wishes, the box was opened. Upon finding the stone, his daughter donated it to the museum in hopes that the curse would be ended. Her letter ended with the words, "Whoever opens this box, do whatever you want with it. My advice, though, is to throw it into the sea." Number 5. Usually, when we read or hear about a heist that's been carried out, it involves several robbers storming into a bank, museum, or jewelry store with weapons blazing and demanding that staff hand over as much loot as they can carry. But now and then, a different kind of heist takes place, which was the case when the massive sculpture was stolen from the Henry Moore Foundation estate, which is situated in Staffordshire, England. The 2-ton statue is called Reclining Figure and was created in 1951 by the artist Henry Moore. It's been valued at over $3.8 million, but in December of 2005, someone decided to steal it despite its immense weight. Soon after the crime was committed, investigators stated that they believed it was taken to be resold to an underground collector, but they've since stated that they no longer believe it's in one piece. Despite several appeals to the public to come forward with information on the heist, no clues have ever been found, and the culprits have never been identified. It was then suggested that it was stolen by a group of people hailing from Essex who used a flatbed truck to transport it. But it's believed that the statue suffered irreparable damage during transit, and it was then taken to a scrap metal dealer before being moved to a scrapyard in Essex. Following this, it was shipped overseas, with one of its possible destinations being in the Netherlands. From here, it was shipped to Asia, and one theory that's been put forward is that it was melted down and used to make electrical components in China. This route ensured that the statue was never found by Interpol. One expert estimated that if the statue was indeed sold for scrap metal, the thieves would only have received about $2,000 for a piece of art that was worth millions. The Henry Moore Foundation has offered a reward of up to $13,000 for information, leading to the arrest of the thieves, but no one has come forward in the nearly 20 years that have passed. One well-known art thief, a man named Jimmy Johnson, told investigators that the figure was taken by a group of travelers who then sold it to a scrap dealer before it was shipped abroad, ultimately ending up in China. The robbery has resulted in security at the estate being upgraded to prevent further robberies of this kind from being carried out. Since the value of scrap metal has skyrocketed over the past few years, England has seen a serious increase, as much as 500% of thefts of bronze statues in the past 3 years, and efforts are being made to bring this to an end. While most of these statues are sold off as scrap, others are stolen and then sold to private collectors on the black market, making them impossible to trace, and chances are they'll never be recovered. Since the thieves were never identified, it's likely that they'll never face the consequences of their actions, and they'll attempt to carry out a similar crime in the future. Number 4. 59-year-old Janet Fairhurst was a resident of Arizona in 2003, where she was also one of several people who had invested in a local bed and breakfast. She had also invested in a piece of land in Mexico, and in August of that year she filed a lawsuit against some of her fellow investors, though sources do not state what the lawsuit involved. She was often seen in town in the company of her dog, who she always had with her, and she had 2 children who lived in different states. On the 4th of August of that year, she contacted her attorney, presumably about the lawsuit, and then mysteriously disappeared without a trace. But no one realized that she'd gone missing until her family contacted the police to report that they hadn't heard from her for several weeks. They requested that investigators travel to her house to perform a welfare check, since they'd started to become concerned about her. They readily agreed, and when they arrived at Janet's house, they couldn't locate her, and they discovered that her van and her dog were nowhere to be found. A search of the area also proved fruitless, and no further clues were found. When her house was checked, investigators speculated that she'd merely planned to step out for a while, possibly to run a few errands, since nothing seemed to be missing or out of place. But they did also add that someone may have entered Janet's house, after which she may have been attacked and forced to leave in her own vehicle with her attacker. Though this remains just a theory, as no evidence of foul play has ever been found. Almost 3 weeks later, her blue 2003 Dodge Caravan was found where it had been abandoned in El Paso, Texas, a 5-hour drive from her house, specifically in the 600 block of Dallas Street. One of the problems that investigators are faced with is the fact that she was only reported as missing long after she'd stopped having contact with the rest of her family. Hence, it can't be ascertained exactly when she vanished or what the circumstances surrounding her disappearance are. Janet's family has asked members of the public to be on the lookout for her and to come forward if they have any information in her case. Investigators have also stated that they're desperate to solve the mystery, since Janet's family needs closure and since it would bring much-needed peace of mind to the community of Eager. Janet is known to have a lump on the lower part of her abdomen, and due to an injury that she sustained a long time ago, she has a misaligned wrist. Anyone with information on this case can contact 928-333-4240. Janet's nameless case number is MP20240. Number 3. On the 28th of February 2001, 23-year-old Stephanie Welch, also known as Stephanie Peterson, disappeared from Lake, Kansas, and her case remains unsolved to this day, despite the best efforts of investigators to locate her. At the time of her disappearance, Stephanie was married to Brian Welch, with whom she had 2 sons, but the marriage had seemingly run its course as the couple was in the midst of divorce proceedings. While this was ongoing, she moved into a mobile home on Lincoln Street along with her 2 children. She was also known to have started dating a man named Roy Moore, and the two had plans for Stephanie to move in with him. On the morning of her disappearance, Stephanie and her son traveled to his preschool in Roy's car, where she dropped him off, and she would then drop off their other son at school at around 9:15 a.m. She then returned to her trailer, where she collected a few of her personal belongings, which she planned to move to Roy's house. Her sons would later report that she never picked them up after school, and the daycare contacted Roy at around 6:20 p.m. to ask him where she was. She was almost an hour late by this point, which was uncharacteristic. Roy got the boy from school and then went to the Kearney County Sheriff's Office where he filed a missing person report. Searches were carried out in the areas where she was last seen, but to no avail. That same day, Roy's car, which she'd been driving, was found empty in the driveway of a mobile home park just outside of Lakin. The person who found it reported that they'd spotted it about 2 hours after Janet dropped off her youngest son at daycare. When the vehicle was inspected, the keys could not be located, but it's believed that no robbery was committed since her wallet was still in the car with $500 inside. Her racket was also found on the front seat. They also noted that there was snow on the wheel wells, leading them to believe that the car had been driven for some distance before being abandoned. Witnesses came forward to report that they'd seen a man in black clothing leaving the vehicle where it was found, but they were unable to identify him. Her family stated that they don't believe she knew anyone living in the park, and hence had likely not driven the car there herself. The park and areas around the car were searched, but no further clues could be found. Strangely, both Roy and Brian stated that they were involved with Janet. Roy stated that they were planning to get married in a few months, while Brian said that they were in the process of mending their relationship. Despite this, neither man was considered a person of interest in the case, since there didn't seem to be any hostility between them and the missing woman. But investigators are, however, confident that they will find the person responsible if the man who dumped Roy's car can be identified. Anyone who can offer information on Janet's case is asked to contact the Kearney County Sheriff's Office at 620-355-6211. Stephanie's NamUs case number is MP35679. Number 2. The moon plays an important part in many different cultures, and in the past it was believed to provide people with certain powers, or that certain phases would have an impact on crops and people's state of mind. Since time long gone by, people have looked at the moon in wonder, not knowing that one day men would walk on its surface. Since it was such an important part of the night sky, any event involving the moon was seen as significant, and one such occurrence took place in 1178 and is no exception. On the 18th of June of that year, a group of 5 monks were looking up into the night sky over Canterbury in England when they witnessed something that caused their blood to run cold. In a manuscript called Gesta Stephani, a monk named Gervais recalled the tale, stating that he and his fellow holy men had been observing the sky at around 9 p.m. that evening. It was a waxing moon and would be a full moon in a few days. But as they watched, they noticed what they described as a flaming torch flying toward the moon, and before their very eyes it made an impact. The result of the collision was an explosion of bright light and a plume of smoke that could be seen for a long time after the collision had occurred. They were certain that the impact had caused the moon to split into 2 parts, which was of course not the case since the moon is still whole. And in modern times, experts are attempting to find out exactly what it is that the monks saw. It's been suggested that they didn't really think the moon had been broken into 2 pieces, but that they described it in this way to accurately portray the plume of smoke that was seen across its surface. Since they didn't have any modern devices to view the moon more closely, they may have thought that it had been bisected, but it's far more likely that they didn't know how to describe what they saw any other way. But what was the fiery torch that had been seen crashing into the surface? Some believe it may have been a meteorite that not only had a trail of smoke behind it, but that its impact threw up a lot of debris, momentarily obscuring large sections of the moon and making it seem as though a portion of it had broken off. Furthermore, it's possible that the meteorite hit with enough force to open a crack in the moon, once again causing the monks to believe that it had split in 2. Then there's the possibility that the monks were merely being sensationalists. At a time when superstition was still very much a part of religion, they may have thought that it was prudent to warn members of the public that a catastrophic event had taken place in the heavens above their heads, though they may have merely been exaggerating their experience. One of the craters on the moon measures about 13 miles in diameter, and it's thought that it's still very young since the radial marks left by the object that struck it have not yet been covered in lunar dust. It's very possible that it was created by the very meteorite that the monks saw that night. Others think that the meteorite actually never impacted the moon, but rather burned up in the Earth's atmosphere at just the right angle to give the monks the impression that it had struck the moon. We may never solve this mystery, but researchers continue to search for answers and hope to one day finally understand the events that took place so many years ago. Number 1. In 1955, Walden Keyes was known to be a very talented and artistic man. Foremost, he was an accomplished poet, but also had made a name for himself as an artist, composer, and art critic, according to those close to him. While most poets write about the beautiful things in life, Keyes was more like Edgar Allan Poe, as his poetry was known to be darker and somewhat bleak. But where Poe was known to partake in certain illegal substances, Keyes was partial to central nervous system stimulants. He was known in the upper echelons of society as he was often seen in the company of well-known people such as Truman Capote and Elizabeth Bishop. At one stage, he worked as a book critic for Time, though he was also known to try his hand at writing fictional tales. He had a rather conceited view of himself, as he on one occasion described himself as the most versatile artist working in America. And many people agreed, and he amassed quite a following of people who appreciated his talents. But in July of 1955, he mysteriously vanished. The case started when 2 cars were found abandoned just before the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and at first it was believed that he'd taken his own life by jumping over the side, but many people dispute this theory. One of the cars was later found to belong to a salesman named Joseph Epler. The other was searched and found to still have the keys inside, along with a neatly folded lab coat, and since no note was left behind, the theory that he jumped off the bridge is far from accepted. But his friends told investigators that they were used to receiving phone calls from Keyes at all hours of the day and night, usually so that he could lament his very existence. He was known to be miserable most of the time, which is apparent from his poetry. His friends tried to pull him out of this state of mind by any means possible, but they failed at every attempt. Making matters worse was the fact that he'd been unable to find a publisher for a new book that he had written, and he was quoted as saying if things continued as they had, that he would go into the abyss, though he added that it would be a charming abyss with good things in it. Before his disappearance, he'd paid the last installment on his car, and when his apartment was searched, his passport, sleeping bag, and checkbook were all found to be missing, further leading people to believe that he'd simply decided to start a new life elsewhere. His ex-wife repeatedly told investigators that he definitely didn't jump off the bridge, a theory that was supported by the fact that several people contacted the authorities to report that they'd seen him as far away as Mexico. Many people believe that he's still alive today and is enjoying his retirement away from the pressures of being an artist and poet. Today, he's remembered for his dark poetry and bleak outlook on life, though he's probably spoken of more often in regards to his disappearance that continues to baffle investigators decades after he mysteriously vanished into thin air. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.